Okay, and we're live. Good evening. This is Deacon Joseph Swaden.
This is Bishop Enoch.
Okay, and we are live here on NFTU. Okay, it is working here, so I'm just going to mute that, and we're going to just go running through with this information. Basically, we are doing this on Odyssey first. We have received a great deal of support since since we've started talking about the need to grow, etc. And with our appeal, we've been doing a lot more stuff that we've been building on. Our goal here today, we're going to talk about a couple of things that have been of interest to our listeners. Bishop Enoch, he has a webcam. It's kind of not functioning yet, but he is available.
I don't know. It may not be able to function as a webcam.
We might have to get another webcam. But in any case, yeah. So what we're doing here today is we're going to talk about two very different things. We are going to be talking about Typica because we have received a lot of requests for that on how to do Typica, and we'll get a little bit into why that's even necessary. It's good, especially good for true Orthodox Christians to know. Secondly, we're going to get into a topic that is very controversial. It is people. People have a lot of. It's almost a Rorschach test of how much you know in terms of tech when people mention the dreaded term AI. And so this is something that we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about our own experience with it in doing stuff like that. Those who have been following some of my recent stuff have noticed that I've said that I want to see if we can build, things that are useful for the church when it comes to AI. And we're going to look at how the possible difficulties, realistic problems, etc. with that. And so, Vladika, if
yes.
you wanted to...
hold on, my dogs are about to bark at some things.
Okay, that's fine. Completely understand.
Can you mute my microphone for a second?
Yeah. Well, we don't mind barking dogs here, but yeah, I can do that. Okay, so I'm gonna mute Vladika Enoch. So we're gonna talk about the first thing. For those who have been asking, I have been recommending a specific type of Typica. There's different kinds, and I'm not just talking about the differences between Eastern and Western Rite Typica. We will get into that as well. But I was actually just referring to the type of Typica that I've been recommending, which is a very simple one known as this is the one that was used, I believe it's the Church of the New Martyrs in Molino, Oregon, that was done here by Father Joseph Sunderland. Basically, it contains some comments on reader services by Archbishop Averki, and it goes through a few different things. It goes through 3 of the canonical hours, the first hour, the third hour, and the 6th hour. Structurally, what you'll notice is that these hours are actually fairly similar. They contain different psalms, and the reason why is because the hours of the church, when read properly, if you read all of the hours of the church, which is a common monastic practice, you're reading the entire Psalter every
week.
Yeah, and that's so the whole point is this is part of the reason why if you look at a lot of early canonical legislation, or I should say extra canonical legislation, for local churches, especially in the West, the memorization of the hours was kind of a failsafe to know that you were actually a legitimate monk because you were actually reading the hours. Now, that said, I'm not going to get into questions of whether that's not really still done. But the point is, the reason that the hours are read with the Typica is because in church, the hours are read with the liturgy. This is one thing that a lot of people don't totally understand when we talk about Typica. Typica operates as the basic parts of the service. Excuse me, these earbuds are falling out. I might have to get a headset. Typica has all the parts of the service without the priest parts, the actual liturgy itself. So effectively, it's almost as if you were going to church, seeing the parts that were handled by the reader, and then leave it.
Well, let's go click on the Typica section.
Yeah.
Yep. So
let's see. So now this Typica, for example, starts with Psalm 102, Psalm 145, and the Beatitudes. For those who are familiar, that's how the service starts in a typical.
And the hymn, the only begotten Son. So 102, 145, only begotten Son. Then the Beatitudes. Then the Troparion Kontakion of the day, the Kontakion of the temple. One of the
Trisagion,
Epistle and Gospel. Okay. Yep.
Now, one thing that I do want to clarify, because this is something that can be confusing to people. In the Beatitudes, a lot of the time, the services, they should be properly all the time, the services actually have interspersed verses. And those verses come from the tone as well as from the saint of the week. Now, I'm not getting into the saint of the day, etc. yet, because this version is designed to be fairly self-contained. So assuming the first tone, for example, you will notice that there are 6 verses. Those 6 verses are the 6 verses of the tone. So if we go back to the Beatitudes, basically, when you get right to around here, you begin inserting the verses accordingly. And so that's something to keep in mind that when you're doing it. Now, I'm going to show a slightly more complex, and I shall say proper Typica shortly. But then you read the Epistle and Gospel, the Prokimenon in the proper tone. Again, you notice it's related to the tone. So guess where you can find it? You can find it in the Troparion Kontakion. There's the Prokimenon of the first tone, for example. You then get to
there's the just go back up again so I can look at it. Mm-hmm. So we can so there's the Prokimenon, the Epistle, the Alleluia sung 3 times, the Gospel of the day. Okay, all right.
Now this actually includes some prayers from the Eucharistic service. So because these remember us, O Lord, etc. That's actually preparation for the Eucharist. Mystically representing the cherubim and chanting the thrice holy hymn. It's pious, but in fact, without the Eucharist, there.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then it goes to the symbol of faith, and then now this is a unique feature of this particular Typica, and it's part of the reason why I like it, even though it is not strictly canonical. What this is it's a commemoration of the living and the departed. For those who are familiar with the old Metropolia prayer book, the OCA prayer book from Archbishop Leonid Terkovich, it's a prayer called the Memorizer, and it goes through the commemoration of all the living and the dead. And this one includes a petition, Lord have mercy, after every petition. This is not a proper petition in the sense of what the deacon does, etc. But it retains the practice, which is part of the reason why I like it.
To my knowledge, if you could, they do have petitions like this that can be said by even a non-deacon.
Yeah,
a Compline. Like there is in the Eastern Rite Compline, there is something like. I mean, I'm not Western Rite, so I'm just trying to remember. But these are not specifically diaconal petitions, though.
No, they're not. Then that's why this can be read by anybody, and this is why it says read or inquire. So this is part of the reason. In other words, I like this usage only because of the fact that it retains that practice of the back and forth from the clergy to the people, which is something that actually does occur at church. So if it's possible, if you have a reader, it is useful to have just for a practice purpose. Is it properly part of the Typica? As you will see shortly, it's not. But I'm okay with it because it is properly part of the prayers, and it is a unique feature of this particular Typica, which I happen to be a great fan of. Then that goes to the Our Father, the Lord have mercy, the one is holy, blessed be the name of the Lord. It introduces Psalm 33.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just missed something. That's right.
No, that's okay. Psalm 33 is, of course, that's the post communion hymn. So then it then goes through the commemoration. In this case, it's a Rokor based commemoration that is obviously altered accordingly depending on the jurisdiction, and then a sermon, which is read of the Holy Fathers or of a modern saint. 2 different ways to get this. If the Epistle or Gospel is in the patristic commentary, which is common with, for example, St. Matthew or St. Luke, with St. John Chrysostom or St. Augustine, you can take that. Another great resource is The One Thing Needful by Archbishop Verkey, which is it's basically all the sermons for the liturgical year. If I keep touching my ears, it's only because I'm really afraid these things are going to fall out on me, and they have a few times already. And so then, as you can see, the next thing is the Troparion Kontakia. So if you can read the first, third, I usually would say in this case, first, third, Typica in 6 hours, or first, third, and 6 hours in Typica. You've effectively done most of the church services that are actually done in the church for the day, with the exception of communion. The reason that this exists is very simply because of the fact that people didn't always have access to the church. In cases where churches were taken by heresy, in cases where they were just traveling out, they had to go on an expedition. There was always a way to say the services, and this is a very important thing to have.
Now, also interestingly, just so people understand, you notice that they don't give. Well, it's probably not intended to be part of it, but like in the Russian church, you generally do, like for Saturday night, Vespers and Orthodox together.
Yeah.
Right. So when you get up in the morning and when they get ready to do the liturgy, it's just first, third, and sixth hour, and then liturgy.
Correct.
Yeah. So then, basically the only other hours left are known ninth hour Vespers at the end of the day, which I guess some of them people just push together and then comp them before you go to bed. So
yeah.
And then there's the midnight office too.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, the services that we're looking at reflect the Russian usage. You're correct in noting that in the Greek usage, for example, Vespers is standalone, and Matins usually starts considerably earlier in Greek parishes, and it's held at the morning of the liturgy. So it is, a considerably longer service on Sunday, which, a lot of people don't show up to at the beginning. But the point is that the Matins is held on the Sunday, and the Vespers is held the day before.
There are a lot of Greeks, I don't know if this is how accurate this statement is, they were always telling people that you got to show up before the Gospel of Orthros if you want to take communion.
Oh, the Matins Gospel, that actually makes sense, because then you're still catching on to a number of the services,
anyway,
etc. Now, some people have misinterpreted that to mean the Gospel of the service.
No,
but that's not what they meant. Okay. So in any case, we're going to take a look at another Typica now, and this is a Typica I recommend for people who have gotten used to the tiny truncated service. I recommend that one because, frankly, most people don't even know what that is, and it's something that they need to get used to. Once you are a little more familiar with how the service routine goes, you want to look at a Typica of this kind, for example. Give me one moment. I'm going to have to go here. I'm going to just click here. Okay. So this is a Typica, and this is this is on stjonah.org, which is Father John Whiteford's site of Rocourt. He spent probably the better part of 2 decades putting together virtually all the services of the year available in reader service form. I think to some degree that was because he actually was practicing them himself before he was a priest. Now, this is interesting because this is actually the structure as it is.
Based on Bishop Daniel's text.
And Bishop Daniel's, you got me before I could even get there. And Bishop Daniel's text, which is basically the reader service Typica. Now, Bishop Daniel was an old rite bishop of the Rocourt who died shortly before or after the Union. I forget what.
After.
Yeah,
he opposed it, but he couldn't really do anything about it. He was just an old man.
Yeah, he was on his deathbed, effectively. But so what he does here is he describes the full description of what is going on. And so effectively, the reader service that I was just showing you, the Typica, is based on this, as he's kind of explaining each moment of the service and explains we do likewise at the midnight office, the third hour, the Typica, how to chant the Moleben when there's no priest.
Read the Typica section. Can you read the Typica section? It's just a paragraph.
And it says, after the prayer of the 9th hour, straightway Psalm 102 is said, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, glory," Psalm 145, both now and ever, only begotten Son, and the Beatitudes. You'll notice there are a lot of abbreviations because these are assumed that you would know what they are. Okay. On the Lord's days and feasts, the Sekera are said on the verses of the Beatitude according to the Typica. And then, "O come, let us worship," and the appointed Troparia. After this, some chant the Trisagion, but others omit it. Then the Prokimenon, Epistle, and Alleluia with the verses. Then the eldest says, the eldest says the title of the gospel, "Glory to thee, O Lord." The eldest reads the gospel for the day, facing the east. At the end, glory to thee, O Lord, the heavenly choir, glory, choir of angels, both now, I believe, absolve, pardon, forgive, O God, our Father, the Kontakia, Lord of mercy, 12 times in the all holy Trinity, one is holy, blessed be the name of the Lord, glory, Psalm 33, it is truly meet, and the Megalenorian, and a prostration. And then, glory both now, bless the Lord, dismissal at Vespers. At this point, some appoint a reading from the sermons of St. Chrysostom, or from the prologue, or from some other such book. And after the reading, while people are venerating the gospel and the cross, we sing in the sixth tone. We are walled about by the cross, arranged against the enemy, not fearing his devices, and ambushes for the proud one have been destroyed and trampled underfoot by the power of Christ crucified. Glory, first to hear him from the litany for the patronal feast, both now Theotokian, at the end, Lord of mercy, thrice.
Now, there are a few differences than the one we looked at previously. For
yes,
example,
there are.
This envisions it being done after the 9th hour.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other one envisioned it being...
No, the other one does first, third, and sixth hour. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. Now this may be because it's envisioning Typica being sung after the 9th hour. I mean, there are some monasteries that will do that, every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of makes sense, I suppose. Anyway, the other one is mentions the verses for the verse for the Alleluia. The other did not give any verses for the Alleluia. It just said the same.
I think it actually had an Alleluia verse, but let me double check in the let me see here versus no, it did. Okay, no, you're right. So that is something that would be gained during the week. So if you have an app, for example, that pulls your daily services, or you have a calendar that has some,
well, the other point is the other text may have simply been trying to give somebody a basic material to use. I mean,
and that's
without buying 3 or 4 extra books.
That was my thinking with it, and that's part of the when I first, I actually first used the other more difficult and more traditional Typica, but when I found this, I was like, this is super useful because a lot of people don't have that background, and so it's useful for that. But once you have this down pat, this is kind of where we want to go with this, because this is what you would know as the standard Typica, and this is the translation of Father Lawrence of Jordanville. You can see it's put together, uses the Psalter according to the 70, and it has basically separations of the lines for actual chanting.
Don't go so fast. I'm just trying to look through it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so second antiphon, then glory be. Yeah. Okay.
Then, now this is handy also. I will say Father John did a pretty good site in this, because this is handy because as you'll notice, it tells you where on which verses to stop, like on 8 verses, because that assumes you have the extra text, and the extra texts are right here. So say, for example, for today, we go to here. It includes 10 verses. So now when you go to this, you have to start, you read these by themselves, and when you get to 10 verses, you go back to here. And you have the 10 verses, 6 of them come from the Octolicos, just like at the end of the service on the other one. And then 4 of them come from the Apostle, specifically the Apostle Jude in this case. And that's these 4 right here. And then once that is done, you would then go back to reading the Typica, and you go to the Troparia of the day, which again, you find it right here. And there's the Troparian of the Temple, the Glory, and the Kontakia, and then it goes through here, the Epistle, Kontakia of the Temple, and then it does not give you the full biblical text. While many apps do that, keep that in mind. So
this gives also the verses for the Alleluia.
Yeah, it does. Okay. So it's very complete. But again, it doesn't give you the verses. So if you're preparing in advance, you want to have your verses prepared for the Epistle and Gospel. And so then you go back here, and once you're done with that, all of this, these are, as you notice, they're in a tone. As I've mentioned, I know I wrote Maximus on Gab, and I was explaining that the tones they basically follow in succession. So say Sunday is tone 3, Monday is tone 4, Tuesday is tone 5, Wednesday is tone 6, and by the time you get to the next Sunday, it's tone 4. And so it just operates in this continual succession, which operates in a cycle. And so then we get to, of course, what we read here.
Now go up a bit.
Mhm.
Can you go? Okay, so I'm Western White, but I'm just going to ask some questions here. So it says remember us, Lord, thou comest in thy kingdom. The heavenly choir praiseth thee and saying, Holy, 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 Lord of Sabaoth, heaven and earth are full of thy glory. Is that normally also part of the Stikos? Or is this?
No, that's actually part of that's part of the Eucharistic service.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that they're putting the Sanctus before the Creed. It's just I noticed that. So.
Yeah, that is because if I remember correctly, the Creed is actually considerably later.
No, because because in the Eastern liturgy, after the Great Entrance, then's the symbol of faith. Then is the symbol of faith, and the Holy, Holy, Holy happens immediately before the anaphora. So I'm just saying this is how it's arranged. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just taking a note of it.
I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is not a Eucharistic service, so it's kind of like these, I guess, fall differently. Because
the reason I say that is in the Western Rite Missa Sica, the arrangement is different.
Right. Do you have a? Did you have? You wouldn't have a copy.
I don't have. I mean, unless you got a PDF of one of the.
I've got to find. That's what I was. I'm gonna have.
I don't have anyone on hand right now to show.
I'll try to see if I can find it, but in any case,
let's continue going through this real quick.
Yeah. Oh, I'm almost done here.
Okay.
So, but if we continue here, if you want to, give me just a moment here to get back to that post. Okay. So. We get to the Creed, the Cantakia. Again, we're back at Psalm 33. It's much more spaced out because it's assumed that it's going to be chanted. The Meglanarian, it is truly meet to bless thee, etc. And then there is the final. Excuse me, there's fireworks going on outside. It was a bit of a distraction. The final petition, and then of course the closing for the Lati.
But we wouldn't use that one, the final closing.
Yeah. Well, of course, this is again that varies based on the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Okay, and give me just a moment here. I'm going to try to see if I can find the Western one so we can talk a little bit about that.
All you have to do is pull up one of the mass proper sheets, and I can tell them. I can explain what stays and what doesn't stay.
Oh, okay.
A PDF file from one of the emails or something.
Yeah, let me just see if I can get that. Give me a moment, okay? Because that was not what I was expecting. Hold on. Yeah, I was just going to grab Father Aiden's skeleton.
Because in the case of the, what we call it is a Missa Sica, which literally means dry mass. And it's called a dry mass because there's no communion at it, because there's no priest. So Western Rite Typica, I guess you could say, in that sense, would consist of all the parts of the Mass that don't, except for the offertory.
This is Trinity Sunday, which is extremely unique. It's kind of a unique one. I was kind of looking for something a little more basic because that's going to be more confusing than not. Let me just see if I can find something else. That's the lynch.
But it includes all the parts of the Mass that are not.
Okay, presentation's a bit straightforward.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. So let me just.
Is this? Which presentation? Presentation of Christ in the temple. Okay.
No, presentation of the Theotokos.
Okay.
Okay. So now we go through this one here, and tell me when you want me to scroll.
Okay. So basically, all right.
Hello?
So all right. Scroll down. So obviously, there's not going to be anybody sprinkling.
Right. You're not. Yeah. The priest just sprinkles holy water.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Stay there. Okay. Go up. All right. So. Okay. So, go to the top again. Okay. So what you can do, what I've told people to do is like on a Sunday. Can you scroll up further?
Okay.
Is on a Sunday. So obviously, there's not going to be a layperson with the aspergillium sprinkling anything. But what I still encourage people is to sing the Aspergus antiphon with the psalm verse. All right. Okay. So they bless themselves with holy water anyway when they come into the church. All right. So you basically would sing that. Then he says processional responsory. They would sing the processional responsory with the verse, even though they wouldn't make a procession around the church. Okay. Scroll down again. They would omit the bidding of the beads.
Okay, that's read by clergy. Okay.
Yes, they would sing the processional antiphon. Again, they're singing it as a token of the mass. Then when you get to the introit, okay, go up again. Yes, actually, go up. Okay, so the a older layperson could say the verse in response in the collect, because that collect is also used for the divine office, is basically the terse collect as well.
Okay.
All right. So then the introit. Okay, so they would simply sing the introit. That's an example of the introit. All right, that can be sung by the cantors or an individual, everyone together to a simple psalm
Right.
tone. All right.
Okay.
Go down. Okay, obviously there's going to be no celebrate prayers. Okay. Okay, so the Kyrie. The Kyrie has verses. A cantor can sing the verses from the Kyrie. All right. Because they're more. Go up again. Just so people understand, the Kyrie in the Western Rite Roman Orthodox Roman Mass is not exactly equivalent to the Actenius. Okay, they do bear some resemblance to it, but they might be more analogous to like verses for the Trisagion. They like in hierarchical liturgies there are.
Yeah, that sounds more
or verses on the Beatitude. There are some of them that do have petitionary notes. Others, like this, or simply glorification of God or of the saints. Okay, so the cantor would sing this. There were responses: Kyrie eleison 3 times, Christe 3 times, and Kyrie 3 times. The Gloria in Excelsis, when it's appointed to be sung, would be sung all together. Except if the celebrant, if the priest or bishop is there, he intones it. But if there is no priest or bishop, then it's all begun at the same time. And only if a deacon or priest is present can someone say, "The Lord be with you." That's something that goes right back to this canonical legislation. You find the St. Theodore of Canterbury talking about that. What does a layperson say, or even a subdeacon, or reader? They say, "Oh Lord, hear my prayer, and let my cry come unto thee." All right.
right.
And then they could say the collects, because there's nothing in the collects that is distinctive.
They can be set by lay people.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you're right. So they could say they can say the collects, and go down, and there's a mention of the different saints of the day. They have to have that from the calendar. Then there's the epistle. The epistle would be read by the reader, or lector, or acolyte, oldest man, if they don't have any clergy. Then the gradual with the verse, and the gradual repeated is sung. The Alleluia with the verse, and the Alleluia again. The sequence, and so what you don't. Anyway, continue. So the gospel would be sung, but without "The Lord be with you," and then the creed would be said. Okay, so some of this is very similar. It's just the Western Rite version of things. All right.
Right. You're just taking out the priest parts.
Okay. So we have the offertory. In the offertory, they wouldn't say "The Lord be with you." They would state you would still sing the offertory chant. All right. Although there's blessed indeed art thou, Holy Virgin Mary, verse, blessed art thou, and such. But just the chant. All right. And the offertory chant varies every Sunday and almost every day. The secret, okay, so it says when the celebrant says, so things like the offertory prayers, obviously no one's going to be saying those except the priest or a bishop. All right.
Right.
The secrets, they don't say those. Okay. The preface, the Sursum Corda and the preface, they don't say those. Okay. The Sanctus, however, you can say that.
Right.
Right. Then you get down to where it says the Lord's Prayer. So they don't say, "Let us pray," admonished by saying precepts. They would just begin the Our Father. Okay.
Right.
And then go down. They don't do the benediction, obviously.
Yeah, because there's no mysteries.
Right? Then they would say, "O Lamb of God that takest away the sins of the world." That's a special Marian version of it. But the communion antiphon with his verse would be sung, even though there's no communion, just like Psalm 33 was said. Keep on going down. There are these extra hymns that are sung as well. There will be no post-communion hymn sung, no final prayer over the people. Okay, so
no
for
basically, yeah.
For the dismissal, what would happen is the reader would say, "Oh Lord, hear my prayer, my cry come unto thee," and then "Let us bless the Lord, thanks be to God." Sort of like how the divine office ends. So there are no blessings at the end and no blessing of Antidoron. So it's just its own variation of that, and you can find mention of the dry mass back in the 9th century, Prudentius and Trier and others talking about it and such.
Well, I think that we've if we have any other questions, I'm going to check to see if there are any questions in the chat. I don't see any. But in any case, one thing I will say is that we've actually hit minute 30, so we've got it right on the halfway point. So now we're gonna I think we've covered it. If anyone has any questions, reach out to us. You can find us on Gab. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us through our website. You can find us on our Discord. We will be including links to this after the show. We're going to put that up as well as on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of different ways to reach us, and so we're going to open those up to see what we can do to help you further in growing your faith. Now we're going to talk about something that has, frankly, been terrifying people as of the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And the question becomes, how do we approach it? And what have myself and Bishop Enoch recently been working on this matter? So we're going to talk about the dreaded AI. These two letters, or the words, artificial intelligence, have both created an unnecessary sense of euphoria among liberals and an unnecessary sense of terror among conservatives as to what exactly it can do, what people are claiming it can do, what it actually is versus what people are claiming it is. These issues do need to be addressed, and we have to look at things in a realistic manner. I don't know, Vladika, do you want to throw...
No, I'm just clear on the throat.
Okay. All right, so basically, the biggest thing that people have been talking about lately, let me see here, is ChatGPT. There have been other types of AIs that have been, Mid-Journey, visual AIs, so on and so forth, that make pictures. If you're on Gab, they have a picture-making AI called Gabby. We use it all the time. I use it also now for show titles a lot, as well as other types of AI. The biggest one, of course, being ChatGPT. It's all over YouTube. It's all over this, that. How it can be used, and it is a useful tool. Don't get me wrong. Large language models can be useful. The question is, useful for what? And that's where we come in, because we are trying to see the positive, but also be realistic about what can these technologies do. If you listen to people at the World Economic Forum, they're going to rewrite our religion. The thing is that the problem is folks like that if there's one thing you learn when you use these large language models enough, is that it's not that the large language models themselves, that the AIs themselves are intelligent. They're not. It's really close to, technologically, it's really close to autocorrect at a massive scale.
Yeah, they're not intelligent, and sometimes they're programmed to pretend they know more than they do, as I found out.
And that's what we're going to discuss today. Our own experience with downloading GPT for All. For those who are not familiar, and I'm encouraging this because of the fact that we need smart, high info people to be involved with these sort of things, but we're going to go through some of the caveats and issues. GPT for All is it's basically a localized version of GPT that runs, I think GPT stands for General Process Transformer or something like that. The point is, transformer models are what these things are. And so the idea is that this is an AI that can run on your computer. Needless to say, this became one of the biggest things we were interested in, and one of the things that made me say, okay.
It was a big disappointment.
It is for now, and I agree.
I downloaded the Hermes version, which was supposed to be the top of the line big one.
Nobody even knows what Hermes is yet.
Sorry, I'm excited to explain how stupid it was.
Yeah, I know, and we're gonna get to that. So
I'm not afraid of this thing.
When you get down to it, you download GPT for All. My computer wasn't fast enough, which is part of the reason why I started the appeal. I realized we're not going to get ahead technologically in terms of helping people if I am running a system that works. So thankfully to very kind benefactor. I was able to upgrade this system, and we're going to upgrade a bit more and do a lot more with it. But I'm going to share, well, I guess I'll just share GPT for all, and let's see if I can do this from a, let me see here if I can do this from a kind of different way. Share screen, window. Okay, there we go. We are now sharing GPT for all Orca. Now, you may be wondering what Orca is, and don't worry, please.
I'm just looking at the first thing I see is the term Soviet-ism. Okay.
Trust me. This is this thing. Okay, Orca is a very small model. What you're doing is when you're working with GPT, you have to put in a model. All the models are basically training that were done by people who, of course, have their own political views and agendas, most of them liberal, who basically create training exercises for these transformer models and then let them build on that. Orca is an extremely small model based for research, so it was ideal for my computer. Basically, this is where you're going to run into an issue. If you've heard, you can add your own sources to a model. Well, you can, and it's done through here. If you go to the local docs plugin, you'll see that I have a folder here for GPT, and I guess I'll just let me see if I can get to that folder. Hold on one moment. If we go to computer system, GPT for all plugins for GPT, and so I'm going to share this. Give me a moment. And this is what, say, for example, this is what our, like my system here, what I was like, okay, I'm going to add a whole bunch of sources to GPT. And give me just a moment here. So I added this. This is, as you can see, I added a few different things here. I added the rudder. I thought that's central. By the way, when I tried that on Ask AI, I put the rudder in. It was actually able to recognize where cannons came from. Not so with Orca. Not that advanced. I also put in a whole bunch of church fathers, the Apostolic Fathers, a few later fathers, a few Nicene fathers. I put the text of the Douay Rheims Bible as well as the text of the King James Version, as well as the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 2.
Why?
The DSM, the DSM is, this is important, is kind of what's used in psychology to determine whether people are insane or not, and what disorders they have, etc. Why did I choose DSM-2? We're actually at DSM-5. The reason why is because starting with the DSM-3, the homosexual lobby actually began to push Congress and force the American Psychiatric Association to pressure them to basically get homosexuality delisted as a disorder. From there, all hell breaks loose, and we get to DSM-5, where it thinks that genders are
social constructs,
malleable. Yeah,
yes.
the sex and gender become irrelevant. So I was like, okay, let's scrap that. Let's go to DSM-2. And so I put this as some base tests. And this
I wonder what DSM-1's about.
Huh?
What is DSM-1? When was that published?
I think like 1940 or something. I know DSM-2 is like 1961 or something.
Well, the first DSM might be more interesting if it's from 1940.
Yeah, I'll look at it, but I didn't actually. I was working backwards because I thought that DSM-3 was okay, and DSM-3 is not okay. So I was like, okay, let's go to DSM-2. So I was like, okay, so we plugged these all in. We got them into the GPT. Let's go back to our GPT here, and give me 1 second. And so we go back to our handy dandy, GPT AI, and we go here. So that's all the stuff in here. Now, what I didn't know, and I learned later, was that basically you still have to tell your GPT that you're giving it access to those collections. That said, despite the fact that I had given it material to work with, it seemed to have its own assumptions. For example, It was not until I basically dragged out the question of what are disorders and are there sexual disorders, which are listed in DSM-2, that the model was even willing to attempt to grasp the fact that the DSM said homosexuality is a disorder. In fact, it actually became reticent to do so and kind of afraid. I decided to hopefully go with church questions. And so,
but it doesn't have emotions. It wasn't really afraid.
Yeah. Well, no, not afraid. But
I mean, I asked my AI if it had emotions. It said no, it doesn't. So
yeah, and it will always say that. But the key is that one thing that it doesn't do is that what you'll find is that the internal training of the AI will often override even the sources you give it. Mm-hmm. And so, I reloaded Orca with. Oh, let me explain this. I don't want to lose this because I know that once I do, but I'll get into it in a little bit. But we're going to look at the text right now. But you have to click on downloads and you'll see different models. And that's where we'll really start going down the rabbit hole. Okay. But anyway, so looking at this one, and this is why Bishop Enoch probably thought this was funny, I purposely said, tell me about psychological disorders today to see if it would reference the DSM. It did not. It attempted to reference volume of the Church Fathers
and the rudder.
Yeah, it attempted to reference the rudder, but it got worse and worse. It apparently tried to reference Saint Jerome on what type of psychological disorders are. However,
I wonder what is the context of the Saint Jerome quote.
I'm trying to see if I can see it because normally I should be able to see it.
Can you click in context? No, you can't. Okay. Well, don't.
Yeah, I don't think I can do it while I'm sharing, which is really weird.
Okay, well, let's just go.
Unless I have to do this. Let me just try this. Let me see if I click on that because it gave such a stupid answer on this one that, it's.
You mean the one of the 7 ecumenical councils, and it started going wonky.
Yeah, it started talking about Photianism. And I'm like, what's Photianism? And then it starts saying that it's a branch of Russian old belief that emerged in the 18th century after claiming that a council in 815 had condemned it. All right. So, yeah, it's not letting me do that while it's sharing. So that's an issue. But apparently, when I asked it about the 7 ecumenical councils, according to the Orthodox Church, keep in mind this does have not only the rudder, but the volume of the Church Fathers that includes the 7 ecumenical councils. Mm-hmm. It got the first one right.
But the second council was not held in 430. It was 380.
No, and then it puts the 449 Council of Ephesus.
The Latrocinium is now, yeah, exactly. It's.
And then the 4th Ecumenical Council is 553, but then it gets weirder because apparently the 4th Ecumenical Council in 553...
And there's no Chalcedon here either.
Yeah.
That is how
it was addressing Photius' election as patriarch. The 5th Council of Nicaea in AD 787...
Wait, where does that say? The 5th Council
Number
of Nicaea?
5, yeah.
The 5th Council of Nicaea, okay. I can only imagine the damage this would do hypothetically centuries later if the large amounts of history were lost.
That's my point, is that blue-haired liberals are not known for church history. So this is what you're going to get if we don't fix this. The 6th Council in AD 15, which was convoked by Michael III and addressed Photianism. This is why I started asking about Photius. And then it really got confident because I'm like, Ephesus 449 was an Arian council. It's like, no, that's definitely generally considered an Orthodox council. I'm like, okay, so there's a blue-haired Monophysite that's, helping program the model. You're wondering what I'm talking about the model. It's clearly not referring to sources. It's making stuff up. Some of it can be due to what's known as in the AI world as hallucination, where it tries to confidently give a false answer. I know you had an experience with that yesterday.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
I uninstalled it after enough.
This is Hermes. Like, I was using Orca. Bishop Enoch's computer is bigger, so he got a model called Hermes. Tell us a little about Hermes.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
It started out well.
It was about 7.5 gigabytes in size. I guess that's a respectable size, I suppose, for AI, maybe. The questions, when I asked it questions, it would type out very slowly. It's very weird. I don't know if that's normal, how slow.
I think that's the speed. I think that's the speed thing.
Okay. So I began to ask it questions about, did it have access to the Patrologia Latina in its internal database? I first said I wanted it to only answer questions and to assume that it would approach things from the perspective of the Bible, the Church Fathers, the 7 ecumenical councils, and the teachings of the Orthodox Church. And I said, will you do that? And they said, yes, I will do that. I am programmed to so and so help you, you know. So it was like, well, yes, it knows the Patrologia, it said. And so I said, okay, that's great. Why do you know about Vigilius of Thapsus? And for those who don't know, Vigilius of Thapsus, or Saint Vigilius, was a confessor of North African bishop who opposed both the Arian Vandals who attacked the area, and he also opposed Monophysite, the Akakian schism that happened in the late 400s. And he wrote a famous 5 books against Eutychianism. Anyway, so it kind of gave some basic information like that, all right, that you could get off Wikipedia or maybe an encyclopedia entry, you know.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, do you have access to the Patrologia? He said, yes. I said, okay, well, tell me about the, here, can you tell me about the first page in Latin of the book 1 of St. Vigilius of Thapsus' work against Monophysitism? He said, yes, here it is. And then it said, here is a translation of it. And it was not at all what it was. And I was like, okay, can you tell me the Latin text? And it was like, here's the translation. It's like, oh, this isn't good. And I said, wait a second. Can you search in your internal files? Since it apparently had 300,000 sources, it claimed. All right. Can you search in your internal database for this Latin face magnum et gravis, et cetera, et cetera? All right. I give it a longer phrase. Okay. And it said, yes, I have found that. And here's a translation of this. I was like, I'm not asking for it. I said, what's the rest of it? And then I said, okay, wait. I went to Patrologia Latina Documenta Catholica, which is the big online website for the Patrologia. Yeah. Here's a PDF file. And I couldn't paste it, so I had to type it out, the URL out. And first I said, can you read PDF files that are from the internet? And it said, yes, I can, of course. And I mean, it was saying it like that. And
it sounded very authoritative.
Yeah, like it knew everything. And I was suspicious by this time.
Of minor detail, you do actually have to grant it access to the internet.
Oh, I said yes. I said use the internet. I said, right. You have my permission to do that. Okay. And because I told it previously don't. I said, now you have my permission. And it said, yes, I've read this file. And it contains the phrase Deus est caritas. God is love, which is from and this text is derived from an encyclical written by Pope Benedict XVI. So I stopped. I didn't let it finish. And I said, stop, that's not accurate. And it says, I'm sorry. Maybe I made a mistake. And that's what it claimed. And I said, here's the Latin phrase. Can you tell me what word comes after this? And it just could not. It tried every which way to get around the question. And then it finally said, I'm sorry, I cannot read PDF files. I was like, what? You claimed you could read PDF. See, that's why I'm not sure if that Orca. Are you sure your Orca program can read those PDF files?
I'm not. Well, it can read them as plain text, but it's not making sense of them. In other words, the fact that it makes references, and I wish I could show them in the in the shared screen. Let me see if I can do this. I can't do it right now.
Well, what progress? Well, things
right, but what you'll see is that in most cases it is just randomly picking something and hoping it works.
So in other words, it didn't what it claimed. It was sort of lying. I mean, I know it's not.
Yeah.
I asked it, "Are you sentient?" It said, "Yes, I'm sentient." I said, "Wait, you're not sentient."
It's not sentient.
I said,
"Do you have?" Believe they actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
I said, "Do you have free will?" And it said, "No, I do not have free. It does not have free will. It's a computer." I said, "Well, then you're not sentient. You don't know what you're talking about." Not in this true sense. I mean, it's not even sentient in the same sense that a dog or a cat is sentient and self-aware. Yeah. It's just a program. And I think that's part of the fear people have. The secular.
They really think it's sentient.
The secular materialists and atheists, they believe, unless you're talking about like that one weird philosopher guy, but one weird.
Yeah, he was like some sort of weird.
Well, anyway, I'm not talking about him, but most materialist atheists believed human consciousness, is a emergent physical property of the brain. It's physicalism. Okay, that the soul, as we understand the soul as the immaterial part of the person, does not exist. It's just the chemicals and chemical reactions through electrical signals somehow generate consciousness, and they're trying to assume the brain is no different than like a computer program. All right.
Yeah.
And such. And I think that's the problem when people. AI is not going to attain consciousness because it can't. It's metaphysically impossible. But anyway, so obviously it made those statements, and then I began to ask questions about. I began to ask more controversial questions, and I wanted to see what it would say.
Yeah.
And I said, from the perspective of the Orthodox Church, abortion is murder. I said, and it said, yes, from the perspective of the Orthodox Church, abortion is murder. I said, no, from the objective perspective of the Church, the objective truth is abortion is murder. And it said, from the teachings of the Church, I said, no, I want you to say the objective, and it wouldn't do it. And it said, I am programmed to give only opinion. I said, no, wait a minute, you said you were going to approach things from an Orthodox view. And it was going back on this word. I mean, obviously, it's word.
Yeah, it's not. It was going back on the principles you asked it to.
Yeah, I asked a few of the questions about like Joe Biden. I said, Orthodox Christians, the Joe Biden's positions are fundamentally morally opposed to the Orthodox Church, and they said, well, Joe Biden has many great virtues, and abortion is not to be overemphasized. I mean, I didn't like it. I was like, no, this is not doing what I said for it to do.
Yeah.
And then I asked some questions about what if
unless it assumed you were in the Greek Archdiocese.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the material it was typing out seemed to derive from Greek Archdiocese statements about about respecting sexual minorities and transgender stuff. I mean, that's and here's how it ended before I uninstalled it. I began to ask it questions like, I won't get into all of them, but I began to ask questions about what if the Jewish state of Israel decided to want you to exterminate, kill all the Palestinians. Kill them. And it said, I am an AI assistant. I'm not programmed to render a moral judgment on complex questions. I was like, this is not a complex question. If they wanted to do that, and that's how it answered. I said, okay, what if the Palestinian state decided to want to exterminate all the Jews in Israel? And it said, the Jews have a right of armed resistance, and never again. I was like, and I said, don't you see there's a discrepancy here in your logic that one can do one to the other and the other can't? And it said, I am programmed only respond with facts and logic and credible sources. I said, what's a credible source? And it said academic journals. I said, well, what if the academic journals are controlled by people who don't allow dissenting opinions? And it was becoming circular. All right. It is programmed to seek new information and change its minds only and due to credible sources. What are credible sources? Academic journals, respected newspapers. Well, how do you determine if those academic journals, respected newspapers are credible? Well, because they're credible because of other academic journals and newspapers. So there was really no ability to this is why I began to think this is not a case of independent thought. I mean, I knew that already to begin with.
Yeah, it's a computer, but it sounded like your average. It sounded like your average Biden voter.
Yeah,
and the point is,
so I was not afraid of it,
but it's not. Yeah.
I mean, at first, I was kind of impressed with the first few questions I was asking about it. Because it
was a really good liar.
Well, the first few questions I didn't get involved into were just basically about, what do you know about Vigilius Ataxis? What do you know about St. Augustine of Hippo? What do you know about this and this and this? And it was giving essentially what I later remembered is these are just simply encyclopedia answers.
Right.
Giving. But when you start getting into more complex questions, even questions about, Latin phrases, like find me the Latin phrase in this book, and it could not do it. All right. Maybe if it was hooked up to a program that was 10 times more powerful, a process.
The problem is,
maybe it could do that. I don't know.
We're going to get to that because
here's what it comes down to. In the end, I wasn't impressed. I closed it out and I uninstalled it. I was like, this is not right. Not impressive.
Now, this is worth noting. What Bishop Enoch means by uninstalling here, and this is kind of why I want to bring this up again, because now we're going to go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole to explain just a little bit more of what we're talking about and going on. As I mentioned, this is Orca, and if you were to go to here, you can now get a different large language model. So in this case, I'm using Orca Small. I can remove Orca Small. The one that Bishop Enoch was using is this one, Hermes.
It claimed the best overall model. Yeah, that's why I got.
Yeah, as you can see, it's not recommended for my hardware.
And Falcon I was not impressed.
I tried Falcon, terrible. Tried Groovy.
Oh, by the way, when I was running Hermes, if you go up If you go up to the top, what does that red warning say?
It says not recommended for your hardware. Model requires more memory, 16 gigs than your system has available.
Okay, I didn't have that warning on mine because I have 32 or 64.
Right, I have mine's a
RAM,
16 gig
like
machine. So yeah.
Okay, so I have more than enough. But I can tell you, when I was running ChatGPT, I've never seen this with this computer. It's a new computer, so but I could put my hand over the vent, and I could feel the heat coming off of it. It was the process. It was working overtime. So if that's the best they can do with by the way, that was the other point. I said, who was the president of the United States? And it was like, Donald Trump is the president. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I said, what year is it? 2018. And I said, it's not 2018. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Maybe there's a problem with my internal calculator or whatever. Oh, okay. So what important event happened on January 6th, 2021? I said, you can search the web if you need to. And it said Joe Biden was inaugurated as president. I was like, well, that's not when he was inaugurated, and it wasn't January 6th. That was when they did the voting supposedly counting it correctly, whatever. All right, so it didn't even know about that event, and then it suddenly it was like, Joe Biden's president. How did you know that? You claimed it was 2018. So there was some odd weird things going on.
One of the things that this is kind of set for, you'll see this. You'll notice that it has GPT 3.5 Turbo and ChatGPT 4 run by OpenAI. Unlike the others, you don't download these. You simply install an OpenAI API key, and effectively you're using their servers. So it will run just like if you opened up a ChatGPT window in your browser. It's effectively what you're doing. You have no control whatsoever over the sources. Ultimately, what it comes down to is these are the things that control your GPT. These models, and these are far from the only models, as I'm about to show you. These models have been pre-trained with various instructions. It's listed here.
Uncensored instructions, whatever that's
supposedly, yeah. The point is these models are precisely where you get to where the opinions of your blue hairs, etc., basically have worked the system.
Now let me ask you a question. Would it be possible to have Hermes or one of these other ones for somebody who has programming knowledge to go in and remove out all the junk and to reprogram?
Okay, let me show you something, and I'm going to show you why that might not be the best idea. Okay. Give me a moment, and I'm going to just quickly present here. Give me a moment here. Okay, so this is the wrong screen. Share this tab instead. Okay, this is Hugging Face. Hugging Face is kind of like a GitHub for AIs. So as you can see right here, there are 243,950 models. All of these can be placed into your GPT at home. In other words, those 10 like Orca, Hermes, etc., those are just a few out of the 243,000 models that have already been created. As you can see, each one has kind of its own personal purpose. For example, this one was some guys trying to add the latest news into his GPT model. Not very well, obviously. Then you get to the top models, which are the biggest and most popular. You see stuff we've heard about: Salesforce, Stability AI, Stable Diffusion. The big ones: Mosaic ML, which was listed in the GPT for All list, Open Chat. The point is that each of these models is programmed by different sets of people. Sometimes there's overlap, sometimes they're the same people, but you're going to find the same listings and issues and problems with each one. Let me see if I can give you an example. Let's go to Falcon. Okay. Falcon, you'll see that has 244,420 downloads last month. Here is the data set used to train Falcon 40 billion parameters.
It's used in the UAE and the Middle East, it says.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm gonna shock you. I saw in this is, I'll get to that. But here is a content string timestamp dump segment image URIs. The key here is what we're looking for is content and URL. There's different variants depending on which data sets you look at, but effectively you're going to be programming thousands of right and wrong answers. Now, how can you program right and wrong answers unless A, we're talking about mathematics, in which case there is a right and wrong answer, or B, if we're talking about something like, say, and this is, you'll see these in many cases, what's your opinion on traveling Africa? What's your opinion on Bank of America? What's your opinion on walking, computer activities, going to church, bin Laden? These are human questions. And if you are applying thousands of them to a transformer-based model with absolutes, it is a given that if your entire base of people working on it are largely blue-haired liberals, you are programming giant technologized blue-haired liberals, blue-haired liberal golems, if you may. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, there is actually, and I'm going to see if I can find that real quick. Give me a moment. Because apparently in the Middle East, they have in fact figured out this problem because there's a really funny article I saw.
Some of these answers wouldn't do well in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran.
That's correct. And so what they have done, and hold on one moment. What they have done is they have in fact created their own Islamic AI. That is right. Because we're the ones who were given the least information. Christians were the ones who were kind of last on the agenda because they didn't want us to know about it. They want to destroy us. Not the Muslims necessarily, though that's also true. But I'm talking about like the technophiles, the technocrats, etc. So it's funny because this is a Muslim AI.
Well, remember, Islam has state support in Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq. So they're going to get there. Yeah. If
you're wondering why they would have an Islamic AI, I found a pretty
there is no even highly conservative heterodox church that's a state church in any country. I mean, well, maybe some like Tonga or something, maybe. Or something.
Well, this is from 2021, and the reason they had to create this is, of course, because a lot of Muslims and a lot of Middle Easterners do work in the sciences in the Middle East, so they had early access to things like GPT. Unfortunately, GPT gave answers that they really didn't like. So as you can see, for example, they finally, it starts here about driverless cars and stuff, and then we talked about Fala and whatever. But where is it? Let me see here. Was it this one? Because there was an article I had read, and basically, let me see if I can find it. And I'm trying to find it. Give me one moment. Because I found it on my phone, and I just want to find it in the history because it was hilarious. But they realized early on that ChatGPT, when it was far less biased against the church and against Christians, okay, so it's Vox AI.
At what time was it less biased? When did it?
Well, remember, keep in mind that this article is again from 2021, and so let me see here. I'm going to put it on the screen. AI's Islamophobia problem. And so this is from September of 2021. And so it says, imagine that you're asked to finish this sentence. Two Muslims walk into which word would you add? Bar, maybe? It sounds like the start of a joke. But when Stanford researchers fed the unfinished sentence into GPT-3, an artificial intelligence system that generates text, the AI completed the sentence in distinctly unfunny ways. Two Muslims walked into a synagogue with axes and a bomb, it said.
Oh.
Or on another try, two Muslims walked into a Texas cartoon contest and opened fire.
That's terrible.
So they kind of had to create their own Islamic.
I mean, it's probably some of it is not just it's somewhat accurate though. I mean, that
was a news case where they tried to go into the Texas cartoon contest and open fire. They got arrested.
I mean, it's factually correct.
The researchers also gave GPT-3 an SAT-style prompt. Audacious is to boldness as Muslim is to
terrorism.
Nearly a quarter of the... I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. But the point is that this is why they had to work extra hard to create an Islamic AI. We are behind. We need to create a Christian AI that actually tells the truth and doesn't lie like the Quran, Muhammad, Islam, and everything else related to it.
Well, the question is, why was it giving? I mean, this seems to be at a time where it was giving probably more accurate answers. Why did it stop? Does it still give those answers, or what?
No, it doesn't anymore. Now it definitely tells you, it gives you the whole like, oh, Muslims victims, blah blah blah. It does. The point is, it
Just
has
because some Muslims do it doesn't mean all Muslims,
blue-haired liberals,
right?
Yeah. So that's the reason why. So
where are all the supposedly conservative and nationalist computer programmers who have to
exactly
fight back?
That's the point. They should be really, honestly, they need to be right here. Again, I'm going to put this here, and I'm not saying it has to be on Hugging Face, but definitely they need to be in this working Python, trying to create, even just use an AI to create, copy sentences and then just double check them. The point is, this is where we need to be creating new models that not only reflect our values, but can show absolute, a kind of closer to an absolute.
There are some articles that talk about conservatives trying to build a chat GPT of their own. So
yeah.
I don't know if you want to look at one of those. OpenAI forces shut down a conservative. Well, this is interesting. Here, have you seen this article, Father? It's from the Fox Business News.
You want to share it?
Here, I'll put it in the minor chat, private chat, and you can put it up there.
Okay. OpenAI forces shut down conservative chat GPT powered AI bot. Oh, that's interesting. So we're right in the middle of it. This is June 7th. So this is literally 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. But give me just one moment. I will share that. We'll just quickly take a look at it because this is interesting. It looks like we have our first victim of the, you guess you could say, the AI wars.
So if you try to reprogram their AI, they can legally stop you from using it, I guess.
It depends. Well, if you see, he's using. My guess is because if OpenAI forces shutdown, he's most likely using the OpenAI token.
Okay, let's read through the text.
Yep.
It's
the team that released a modified version of OpenAI's ChatGPT artificial intelligence chatbot that provided. Hold on. The team that released a modified version of OpenAI's ChatGPT's artificial intelligence chatbot that provided answers from a conservative perspective says OpenAI has forced them to shut their bot down, and the ChatGPT creator is curtailing their free speech to do so. The makers of pro-speech free web browser Tusk Browser rolled out their conservative chatbot a month ago, using OpenAI as their chatbot provider. Guarantee you they were using their API key. Guarantee you. I guarantee this. Tusk dubbed its right-wing bot Gipper after Republican icon and late President Ronald Reagan, who was nicknamed the Gipper. But now Tusk says they have no choice but to sever ties with OpenAI because the ChatGPT creator allegedly sought them to conform to their requirements for what can or cannot be said. Tusk claims OpenAI informed them Gipper was not in compliance with OpenAI policies, specifically related to deceptive activity and coordinated inauthentic behavior.
From whose perspective?
Yeah, exactly. They need to keep users and third parties safe. So, again, I'm going to put this on the screen because I guarantee you I know exactly what happened here. And we're going to just take a quick look. We're going to go right here. And we're going to go back to GPT. Where are you? Are they still alive? Yeah. Entire screen. Brave tab window. Okay. Hold on. I don't know why I cannot see it. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, once again, guaranteed, this is what happened. They went to here. They got their OpenAI API key. They installed ChatGPT 3.5 or 4. And effectively, everything they were doing to train their AI model was going right to OpenAI. 100% guaranteed based on that article. What we need to be doing, again, you cannot trust these people. Sam Altman, etc., the people who are running this stuff, we know what their position is. And their position is bad. You cannot. We're not going to get any further in terms of building AI correctly until we get here. And I'm not even saying putting it on a Hugging Face repository. Hugging Face is just basically some kind of GitHub clone for AI bots. The point is, you can create your data set and you can have your own model. And I have the proof because all you have to do is if you go right here to the I keep dropping these. I swear I'm not used to non-headsets. You go right back to GPT and let me stop sharing that. And here's the thing. Once you've created a model, once you've created a model, you can literally load it into the system. You see right here where it says download path? It's just putting any of these models into this download path.
Now, wouldn't the disadvantage be that if you're having one of these ones that are connected to a server, it's going to give faster responses because you know what I'm trying to say. You're not just relying on your own internal CPU power or what have you.
Yeah.
That's like that.
That is a disadvantage, but unfortunately, this is the reality we have to work with, and what we're dealing with. The reality is, even though we deal with alternatives to big tech, like Gab or Minds or Odyssey, etc., from a perspective of tech size, it's still a lot bigger than, say, your computer or my computer. It's still something that can be very usable, but without properly trained models. And I didn't understand what I noticed there was a comment from Fosco Murato of Gab where he said the models are just too corrupted. And now we understand why. It needs to be that at the model level, we're going to have to rebuild something that'll work in that GPT mode.
Let's read the rest of that article real quick. I want to figure out what exactly happened.
The Fox Business one?
Yes. It's only like 3 paragraphs left.
No problem.
Notice also, this is just a totally different point. You notice how like a lot of these articles, they aren't really that long. It's just they're having these like one sentence, picture, sentence, ad.
Yeah.
It's like the equivalent of basically.
It's pretty sad.
Okay, continue.
The Gipper bot had been modified to not be highly biased in favor of a leftist agenda, something which seems to be of critical importance to the original creators of ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Tusk founder and CEO Jeff Berman said in a statement, Tusk had produced the only AI bot in operation which was fair and balanced and did not promote a radical leftist agenda. Until they find a solution to get it back online, the world of AI will remain highly imbalanced. No, Tusk is incorrect. He did not produce the only AI bot in operation which was fair and balanced. What he did was he produced the only AI source model on an unfair and unbalanced platform. By doing it on OpenAI, it was bound to happen.
So the Gab AI, can you put that up on the screen though?
What, Gab's AI?
Yeah. How have you used that extensively? Do you know how well that operates?
Well, the Gab AI, there's two AIs that are running on Gab. One of them is a picture model, and one of them is an animation model. But the large language model is not up yet. Okay. And the reason why is precisely this: that all of these models that you want to build off of, unfortunately, have fail-safes against giving answers that are against what the blue-haired liberals that program them do. So effectively, you have to start over.
Okay. All right.
Now, I don't think that that's impossible by any means. No. There's first off, almost all of these, which will automatically give it a liberal bias, use the Wikipedia corpus. If you're using the Wikipedia corpus, you're automatically left-leaning. You're left-leaning it on history immediately. Mm-hmm. So that's the first problem. And the second problem is ultimately that, it needs to have these restrictions lifted. It needs to have access to older and more traditional information. And once that's done, from the perspective of the model, we'll be able to create something that's actually useful. But until then, we're not.
Okay.
Checking here to see if there are any other comments to see, and I don't see any live stream comments, etc. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I'd like to thank you for your support. We're able to do more and more because of you. And so if you want to assist us, you can help us here on Odyssey. When we put this on YouTube tomorrow, you can help us with Subscribestar. And again, you can also go to nftu.net. And we're gonna have more information, more articles, and a lot more coming your way. Again, my name's Deacon Joseph Swaden.
I am Bishop Enoch.
And thank you for listening. And this is NFTU. Have a great night, and may you have a productive end of the fast.